Hi and welcome to Jessie James Beads. I'm Jem and I'm here today with the Goddess Mayahuel collection, an absolute feast of blues and golden tones. Let's head down to the board. We've got a project to make together inspired by the Goddess Mayahuel herself, by the spiny agave plant. Let's go and take a look at that beautiful bead mix. Goddess Mayahuel, the Aztec goddess of the agave. I've been inspired by the spikiness of the maguey or agave plants, and I've taken that to create this fun little motif based on my lotus blossom technique. So I hope that you'll enjoy it, but let's take a quick look at the beads in the mix. You have got some incredible, beautiful boho beads to work with. I adore these ceramic cylinder beads. Really beautiful, quite geometric, and does make me think of what little I know of the Aztec world. You've got spacers, you've got more ceramics. These are absolutely gorgeous, earthy and turquoise tones in there. You've got some big glitzy beads as well, large faceted rounds and hexagonal beads. We've also got one of these. If I call it a spacer, it's a bit rude, and I think we'll probably use one of those today. You do also have these gorgeous filigree teardrop beads and so much more besides. There's bead caps, there's smaller, and you've got these fun little spacers which actually prove to be very useful in today's design. So let's just pop those beads out of the way for the moment. Let's grab a couple of random beads to work with to bring this design to life. In terms of wire, we're going to be working with 18 gauge round wire, and I have around about 18 inches, which seems like quite a lot, and it is a lot to hold on to, but we're going to find it very useful when it comes to creating this spiky section of the technique. For today's tools, it would be very useful to have some multi-step bail makers. However, you could use a round form such as a pencil and your round nose pliers if you don't have access. So what we're going to do is to smooth that 18 inches of 18 gauge wire through all the way from one end to the other at least 3 times. Let's get some warmth and fluidity into that wire to help it work for us today. So what we're going to do is start with the largest size on our bail makers, or grab a round form such as a rounded pencil or similar item from your home. What we will do to begin with is start by putting a little U shape down at the base, and this is just less than an inch from the U shape to the very end of the wire. So what I want to do is to create a series of pear drop shapes in the wire that go on top of one another, so they stack. So let's just turn that over. I'm going to use the smallest pin on my bail makers to create the other end of the pear drop, and I'm just going to twist that around. It's a little bit funny in my hands because I'm trying to make it easy for you to see. So if I just push that all the way down, so I'm using the smallest and largest pins on my bail making pliers. You could use a marked set of your round nose pliers and a pencil. What we need to do now is to create a series of these forms. So I'd quite like to have 5 of these perfected pear shapes, all stacked one on top of the other. Keeping your wire warm is helpful. So let's pop the largest section, or if you're using it, a pencil, into that form down at the bottom and draw the wire all the way around. And we want to get these to stack. They will pull apart slightly, but don't worry about it. We'll get it all to come true at the end. So I'm chasing around, creating the same shape over and over again, a bit like a very oddly shaped spring. So if we put that next pin of the bail making pliers in and just spin that around, you can see that we've created the next pointed end. So let's pop the large section in up at the end there, making sure you don't clench anything in any box joints that you have down at the base of the pliers, and you may need to remove your pliers a couple of times just to draw that around. And they're opening out slightly, but I'm not overly worried about that because we're going to pinch everything together in just a moment. So again, we return to the smallest section on the bail making pliers, draw the pliers around again, and let's pop the largest one in down at the base, and you can use your thumb just to support that wire as you draw it around. You will need to just withdraw the pliers from position whilst you return the wire back down to the other end. We're about to make our fourth little shape in the narrow end, so you can pop that pin back in. It's very repetitive and quite relaxing once you get your head around how it works, and just moving the pliers around until they sit where you need them. So let's turn that back over and draw it all the way back up to the end. Switch out for the smallest section of those bail making pliers again and turn that all the way over. So what we're looking for is to have 5, can you see those 5 shorter ends? And then we're going to bring the largest section in one more time, slide that all the way home and bring the tail of the wire over the top and just push that into position. So I've also got 6 of the larger end of the form, and we're just going to trim away, trying to keep them equal and opposite to one another where the ends are. So I've just pulled that out slightly, and I'll trim the other side so it's a nice flush cut. Ideally they need to be the same length. One is slightly shorter on mine than the other. I'm not going to let it worry me. So you can either again use the smallest pin on your bail makers, or you can use the tip of your round nose pliers. What we're going to need to do very, very gently is to create a coil down here on either end. So this is the short cut end that just sits up at the moment, and I'm going to support the whole frame as I rotate that around and bring it to sit down in the centre of that funny little pear-shaped frame. And you can just help that sit centrally, just move that over until it sits exactly where you want it to, which should be approximately in the middle of the fat end of the pear. So I will just trim a tiny bit off this side so that it's approximately the same length as the other end. Let's get that into the scrap pot. And then we're going to take the other cut end and make another spiral to sit on the other side of our little, like a concertina or a very, very odd looking little spring. It's quite a mechanical design, but quite good fun, and it opens up a world of possibilities. So I'm just rotating that around. Obviously that's not sitting quite centrally just yet, so I'm going to give that a quick straighten up, like so, and then just push it until it sits where I want it to. And there we go. So once you have got the 5 points, if I just splay them out, you'll see that there are indeed 5 of them. What we can do is tighten those up slightly, but it's in fact slightly easier to tighten those up at the next stage of the demonstration. So the next thing that we will do is grab around about 6 inches of wire. Again, this is 18 gauge and it's a medium copper I'm working with. If you have craft wire, just give that a quick smooth through and we can always make that work. A nice medium copper like your German style is ideal for this technique. So I'm going to make a very tight little coil now, starting at the very end of my round nose pliers, rotating about 3/4 of the way around a circle, and then I'm going to start pushing that circle into my non-dominant forefinger to create a closed up spiral. And I think probably I'll go for a good 3 rotations from the start point, moving all the way around until we get back just next to that start point. And what we're going to do here is give this a quick squish to make it nice and strong. I'm just going to flip that over, grip firmly across that spiral and pull the tail of the wire so that it goes across the middle. So it looks a little bit like a lollipop at the moment, making sure that that wire crosses that central aperture. Very, very gently now we're going to hold that folded section and flip the disc away. So we're making in effect a disc head pin with a homemade spiral. What we're going to do now is feed that through the loops, but we're going to add in one of these spacers, one for the front. Slide that down so that it sits over the disc. Try to keep that pin straight. Slide it all the way through the holes at the centre, and then slide the second one of those spacers on the back and bring that back down. Now if we just compress our little springy section slightly, what we would like to do now is draw the wire up and away. So I'm just going to draw that over the base of the spiky section before gripping hold of my pliers and turning away. So we've got that crimped into position now, and you can play around with that to make it sit how you want. You can just pull the disc just ever so slightly to make that sit where you want it to. So what we're going to do now, you can decide on your bead order in a little while, but let's splay this out so that it's reminiscent of that agave. I believe the pronunciation is Mayahuel, but I could be incorrect. I'm not great with pronunciation, if I'm honest. So we're just very, very gently teasing those spines of the cactus just apart until that sits in an attractive display. So if you look at some of the information available on the internet about the goddess Mayahuel, she's often seen wearing a spiky headdress. So that's what my inspiration for this design was. Now if you want to tighten these up slightly to make them a little bit more cactus-like or agave-like, you can just very, very gently grip and squish, turning that around, grip and squish, and then you can load up your core wire with whichever beads you fancy. So I've got a little selection here. I think we'll just randomly throw them on, to be fair. I think they all look beautiful. Just pushing that down so that it sits above the spiky section, and let's maybe go for another one of these large, I'm not going to call it a spacer, that's really, really rude if I do. If your wire's not straight, it won't go through such a long bead, so you need to make sure that that's straight, or you could alternatively grab a different bead. I actually think that looks quite lovely. So all we need to do now is a very, very quick wrapped loop up at the top, protecting your bead, bringing that wire forwards at 90 degrees away from the design. Let's grab some bail making pliers to make a bail up at the top, rotate that wire around all the way. Trying to keep that round is obviously a good idea. And then we're just going to finish off by rotating around that core wire a couple of times to fill the gap. And then you can trim away and you've got yourself a Goddess Mayahuel pendant. Well, let's just tidy that last little cut bit up, being careful not to scratch your beads. I tend to use the curved side of my pliers for this, just tucking that little tail down and away. And you've got yourself a series of spiky bead pendants.